The People's Choice Classic has been the season opener for a number of years now, giving riders a chance to warm up their legs before the Tour Down Under begins proper in a few days' time. A fast race was expected on this 2.3km street circuit, tackled 22 times, adding up to a shade over 50km worth of racing. The initial break escaped on lap 3 of 22 and comprised a couple of Australian riders in the form of Ben O'Connor of Dimension Data and Will Clark of Cannondale Drapac. The two got a small gap and contested the first prime of the race at the end of lap 5. Clark took the sprint points before dropping back, leaving O'Connor to go solo. Back in the peloton, Orica Scott were keeping watch on the front, looking after the interests of Australian criterium champion Caleb Ewan, a firm favourite for this race having won it last year. Esteban Chavez was more than happy to pitch in with the early pace-setting duties with his teammate Damien Howson. O'Connor, making his debut at World Tour level having signed from Avanti Isoway last season, was held to roughly 30 seconds as we approached the midpoint of the race. He duly took prime number 2 on lap 10 and prime 3 on lap 15. The gap to the 21-year-old stabilised at around half a minute as the bunch began to assemble behind. With just over 10 kilometres of racing to go, O'Connor's time at the head of the race was finally up, with the sprinters' teams now racking up the pace. Orica Scott, Sunweb, Cannondale Drapac and UAE all jostling for position. Team Sky then took up the pace with Ian Stannard, Geraint Thomas and Luke Rowe all looking after the interests of their sprinter Danny Van Poppel. Despite the high pace, there were plenty of fresh riders at the head of affairs as the bell rung for the 22nd and final lap. By this time, Bora Hansgrohe had found the front. However, a well-timed surge on the back straight got Orica Scott into a good position into the final corner, leaving new signing Roger Kluger to provide the final surge for pocket rocket Caleb Ewan on the final straight. Ewan's initial acceleration was far too hot for Sagan, and despite a fast finish from Sam Bennett, the Australian held on to deliver another big win in his young career.
We probably went quite early compared to a lot of the other teams, but they rode absolutely perfectly. They used the other teams towards the end when they were running out of guys, and they still delivered me perfectly in the end, with a full lead out. And I'm really happy it started off well with Roger as well. He delivered me perfectly.
Ewan's win leaves plenty for the other sprinters to think about as we go into the 6th-stage Tour Down Under in just a couple of days' time. Stage 1 on Tuesday is anticipated to be a bunch finish, and it's hard to bet against Orica Scott's star sprinter at the moment. We'll be rounding up all the action once again, so subscribe to GCN to make sure you don't miss a single stage. Just click on the globe. To see Matt discussing the finer points of sprinting with Caleb Ewan at last year's Giro d'Italia, click here. And for our preview of this year's Tour Down Under, click here.